Míle buíochas Alaska and Corlia. Today I'm very glad that the first stage of my pet theft bill passed here in Leinster House, and I'm glad to get another opportunity to discuss this really important issue with regards to the tabling of this amendment or this motion today as well. Obviously, pets are very much members of people's families, and anybody who's lost a pet or anybody who's had a pet die will tell you that it's a heartbreaking situation. That people grieve because they lose their pets, and people grieve because their pets die. This is an everyday sad experience that are experienced through families right throughout the country. And as such, the sentence with regards to the theft of pets should be different than the sentence that exists for the theft of an inanimate object. It should be harsher. It should be designed to deter in a stronger fashion, and it should send us a strong message that if you do impact so devastatingly on a family, you will have to spend time in prison as a result of this. And I know people who have had pets stolen, and yet the sentence has been similar to the theft of a mobile phone, a laptop, or a farmyard object as well. I know of a family that lives in Navan, in the street adjacent to the street in which I grew up in. And every day, their dog, by himself, used to walk up the street to the pedestrian crossing. He would wait for the pedestrian crossing lights to change, and then he would cross the road, and then he would go to the local pet shop. He'd bark a couple of times, and the pet shop owner would open the door and throw out a pig's ear to the dog. The dog would scoff the pig's ear, then make its way back to the family home through the pedestrian crossing again. At the end of every week, the family used to pay the dog's tab in the pet shop. They used to make up and pay the cost of the 5 pig's ears that the dog consumes that week. And when that dog passed, it was amazing that many of the people of Navan actually felt a sadness, because this character, to a certain extent, that they had engaged with on a regular basis for years had been lost. So a pet is no inanimate object, and the loss of a pet must be recognised as such in the law. In the last year, because of COVID, we've seen a change with regards to this, and the pet theft issue has come into sharp focus for many families. COVID lockdowns have obviously seen many families decide to get a pet, and as a result of this and a number of other issues, the cost or the price of pets has radically increased. My own dog is a crossbreed between a red setter and a golden retriever. He's 13 years old. We paid €50 for him 13 years ago. The same dog on the internet now would cost €1,500, €1,500 for a crossbreed dog on the internet. So this shows you that now the whole idea of pet theft has become far more lucrative, and as a result we see criminal gangs get involved in the theft of pets. And many people will have heard about markings outside of their own gates on the tarmac, or strings tied to gates, which shows that these gangs are searching for these animals and returning at night time under the cover of darkness. Then they're robbing these pets. There's a recent seizure of 32 stolen dogs in Swords just last August. The value is estimated anything between €130,000 and €150,000. And this again pointed to the organised nature of this crime. Animals are sold online, animals are sold for cash, or animals are got onto ferries fast to go over to Britain. And this makes Garda efforts to break this crime far more difficult. So, my instinct in this is that we need to tackle it. And I was interested, and I'm surprised nearly at Pa Daly from Sinn Féin, who mentioned earlier on that this really wasn't a massive issue at all. He contradicted his teammate, Pauline Tully, who did recognise how serious this is. But I've done a good bit of research on exactly the incidence of this particular crime in the state. There's been 17,014 theft of animals in the state over the last 10 years. There's been another 40,000 reportings of lost animals in the state. And a big chunk of that 40,000 would actually, in fact, have been stolen animals. And anybody that's been involved with the Gardaí will know that there's always a difference between what's reported and actually what happens, because many people don't report these incidences whatsoever. So this is a big crime. It's a crime with a significant impact. And when I formulated the bill back last October in response to this crime and published it back last October, I met and my office discussed with the DSPCA and Dog Trust. And these are two organisations that work, on many occasions with stolen animals or lost animals, etc. And they have backed the Aontú bill on this. They want to see that the law reflects the gravity of the crime when it comes to the theft of pets. There has been a jump just in the last 12 months of 16% in the number of animals reported to the Gardaí that have been stolen. Unfortunately, there's a very low level of offence or charges or summons brought against people who are involved in this particular crimes. Only 1 in 5 of these crimes ever see a charge or a summons. And this points to the fact that there is a massive underfunding of Gardaí around the country. We often hear from the government that we're at the highest level of Gardaí ever in the state, that we're back up to 2009 figures before the crash, before Fine Gael hammered the Gardaí numbers in the state. But the truth of the matter is, if you take it Garda per population, we're still not back up to 2009 figures. So on a per capita basis, we're still less than 2009 with the number of Gardaí. I know in my own constituency of Meath, we have whole swathes of the county which are absent of Garda stations. Those towns that do have Garda stations, many of them are only working part-time. Ratoath is the biggest town in the state without a Garda station. And I know of a section of Meath which is 30 miles wide, probably about 10 to 15 miles in height. And on a Sunday, there's 5 Gardaí on duty there. If 2 of those Gardaí are taken out for an arrest, it hardly leaves enough Gardaí to actually cover the phones in that particular part of the county. So it stands to reason that Gardaí are unable to bring the charges and summons necessary to tackle this crime in a better way. What we need also is for the government to put its money where its mouth is, to make sure that Garda stations are functioning, that they're open, and to make sure that there's enough Gardaí to be able to do the job that's in hand. The key element of this, and one of my worries in this, is that we will have a lot of motherhood and apple pie when it comes to this particular issue. That people will speak very positively about the need for us to get tough on this particular crime, but that we won't see any action. And that's why I'm asking the government to accept this motion. I'm asking the government to accept the bill that I've put forward and help me expedite this bill through the House so that we can give some comfort to families who are dependent upon pets in their own families around the country.